Good morning, good morning. I am live with Sewing Saturdays. Today we're going to be working on the Havana skirt collection. Specifically, I'm going to be talking in length about gathering ruffles. That is a big feature of this skirt, and I think it's really important that we cover it. So I just want to make sure that you guys are all here. Good morning. We are live for Sewing Saturdays. I'm going to get started on the different ways that you can gather ruffles. So I have cut this morning for demonstration. I've cut some ruffles, and I am just going to work on that today, and we're going to talk about the different ways that you can gather your skirt down. Also going to be working on another skirt this week for you guys. It's going to be more of like a free pattern so that you guys can see a little bit more ruffles. I've been getting a lot of questions on all of my pages about gathering ruffles down to things like ribbon and other skirts. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got a chance to see. Let's see here. Make this the skirt. How's everybody doing today? How is everybody doing? It is Saturday afternoon. I am sewing as usual. How is everybody doing today? So this is gonna be my skirt section, my skirt front, if you will. And I am going to get right into it here. I'm gonna show so ruffle number one. So when you cut ruffles, you probably have, you cut the width of the fabric so many times, and then you end up having these long panels like this, right? So when you have your long ruffle panel, the first thing that I recommend that you do is to hem your ruffle. So you're gonna turn, I do the thin double rolled hem to hem my ruffles. So I like to turn it one time. Here, I'm gonna turn it one time, really thin. And then I'm going to stitch that all the way down the length. So I'm just doing a thin double rolled hem for my ruffle hem. Thin double rolled hem. To hem your ruffle layer first, because I think that you should hem your ruffle layer first. It makes it really, really easy. So I'm just hemming the ruffle layer before I do my gathering stitches. Most of the time when you're gathering something, you're gathering with like a really thin fabric, something that you might have an issue with it raveling or the threads coming undone. So I do recommend to do this first, because then it saves you when you're gathering the threads to have like all kinds of crazy threads everywhere. So I'm just hemming the ruffle layer first before I run my gathering stitches. And I'm also going to give you guys a couple examples on different ways to gather today. There's 3 ways that I for sure know. So I just did 1 row of stitching here to do the double rolled hem, you're gonna roll it again, and then you're gonna do that. But so I'm gonna talk about the couple different ways to do your gathering stitches. So today I'm gonna show you 3 ways to gather your fabric. So I have a long panel, and this is my ruffle panel, and the way that I like to use is two layers of stitching. So what you would do is put your machine on the longest stitch possible, and then you're gonna run the 2 layers of stitching next to each other, and I'm gonna show you guys that. But first, an interesting way. So I have this, I don't know, it's like a yarn almost, but it's not quite yarn. So it's like a thicker, I don't know, it's not yarn. What would you call this? String? Thick woven string. Some people use dental floss for this, which is kind of funny. So you would cut your string, you know, the length of your piece that you're gonna gather. Okay, so you would cut your string the length of the piece that you're gonna gather, and you're gonna put it in your seam allowance, and then you're actually going to zigzag over the thread. So this is way number 1 to gather your fabric. So you're going to so I have the thread down the length of the fabric, and I'm gonna zigzag over it. So I'm gonna zigzag over top of it, all the way down the length. So just make sure that you don't catch the thread. And sorry guys, I'm working on a new machine here and I still don't know what I'm doing. It's still too thin, so this is probably not gonna work today. Let's see. Let's try that. Okay. So I'm just making the zigzag bigger, wider, so that as it skips over the yarn, I'm able to pull it through that tunnel. Basically making a tunnel with zigzag stitching. There we go. So I'm just running the zigzag stitching right over top. Right over top of that thread. So this will be number 1 for gathering. And I'm gonna show that to you up close here. Rope's probably good. Okay, so I have the zigzag over top of this here. So in theory, if you get your zigzag wide enough, you should be able to just pull the tunnel and it gathers it right down for you. So you're just gonna slide it across. So this right here, this is number 1. This is number 1 way to, it's not my top favorite, and I'll show you why. But this is example number 1 of how to gather your ruffles here. And then of course you can, you're gonna, like, you could space this out. So like if you don't need it this tight, you know, you can move it back a little bit and you can lengthen the ruffle. Some people, I said, use dental floss for this. Have you seen dental floss used? Any kind of yarn you can use, as long as you don't catch the fibers of the yarn, it will still slide across for you. So that is number 1. And number 2, I'm going to show you. Number 2 is going to be using pins. So we're going to use pins to gather down. So if your, let's see, where's it at? Your skirt, you know, is a certain width, and your ruffle panels are obviously a lot more, you're gathering down. I'm going to show you how to do that with pins. So your skirt section, okay. So your skirt section is here. This is your skirt front. And now to do this with pins, you're basically going to be like, I keep saying like, I'm so sorry this morning. So this is your skirt front, and I need the ruffle panel to be half of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle. So you'll start by pinning it. So I'm going to say this is how I'm going to sew it. So you're going to pin. And this is example number 2 of doing the ruffles. So I pin both ends, and then I match up the center like over and over again. So match up the center. And then I'm going to move to the next center. Find that center. And then I just keep doing this until I have it all the way down to the size that you want it to be. So I'm going to find the center. And sometimes, so I'm finding the center again, and finding the center again until I have it down to something that's manageable to sew. So you don't want it to have like all kinds of crazy lumps, but you also, that being said, here I'll show you an example where, say it's like this, where when you find the center, it's very, very gathered, which is kind of how you want it. For the skirt example, the Havana skirt collection that I am showing today, this is why I'm showing the ruffles. So I am doing example number 2 of how to gather your ruffles. So finding the center of that, just pinning it. And you can decide at what layer you're comfortable with. Sometimes I like to have the lumps. Let me show you what I mean by that. Sometimes it'll look like this, and you're kind of comfortable with sewing that. This will give you a little bit more pleated look. If you keep pinning them in the center, it'll give you that gathered look. And this is the one that uses the less thread. But then when it's on the machine, you will actually have to kind of finagle it and smash things down in between while you're sewing, which makes that process a little bit slower. So it's not as fast, takes a while, but it does use less thread. Actually using no gathering thread. So I'm going to show you number 2. Right here. And every time that you do any kind of gathering anything, you always want to make sure that you're looking at the back, because I have smushed up this back here. It looks crazy. And you want to make sure that you check that, because when you're sewing, you don't want your skirt to get crazy in the back. And that's actually your front, the front fabric. You don't want it to show on your front fabric. You have all these puckers. So make sure that you are paying attention to that. So I would go back and pull these pins out and smooth it down so that when I'm sewing, I know that the back side is not going to get bunched or have any crazy stuff happening back here. Okay, so this is number 2, the number 2 example of how to gather down your ruffle. So you would just keep doing this over and over again, and you could stitch a little bit at a time if you wanted to. This is a good way to visually see what it's going to look like before you attach it. So I am going to show you the 3rd way to gather the fabric. And I'm going to run 2 gathering stitches side by side and then pull them down. I think that this is the best way. It does use a lot of thread and does take a lot of patience, but I think it's the best way because it looks the prettiest when you're done. So we're gonna be on a regular stitch and we're gonna do the stitch width as high as you can go. So big, long stitches. And then I like to start at 1/4 of an inch. I like to start at 1/4 of an inch width. So I'm presser foot width away from the edge of the fabric. And I'm just gonna run a straight stitch. I'm gonna have to do my bobbin before the end of this. You're gonna run a straight stitch, no back stitching at all. Do not back stitch because that is going to limit your gathering ability. So right now I'm doing a long, basically basting stitch. I'm gonna use it to gather. And I'm going 1/4 of an inch, so presser foot width away from the edge of the fabric. And I'm going all the way across your panel. So if you are sewing something that has, so you want to make sure that you're pulling nice long tails out the machine. So this is what that looks like. Long stitches. The stitching is as wide as I can get it. So nice long stitches all the way down. And do I have enough? Probably not. Okay, so I'm gonna fill my bobbin real quick while I'm talking. Excuse me. So, nice long stitches, and then basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna pull the threads, one thread, and I've heard that it's easier to do the bobbin thread. So we're gonna try that today. And we just, the downside to this option is that you are gonna use more thread. So you do have to pay attention to your bobbin thread to make sure that you have enough thread, because running out will mess up your gathering stitches. And if you do run out, then you'll just basically need to stop at that point and then run another row of gathering stitches, and then you'll just gather down so that each gather meets each other, so that you don't have any crazy sections that don't have gathers. Hi everybody, how's it going? Good morning, Sewing Saturdays. I'm working on gathering ruffles today. I've so far shown 2 different ways to gather ruffles, and I'm working on the 3rd way. The first one is a zigzag over a yarn or rope or thin, this is string, it's like a heavy duty string with a zigzag so it slides across like a curtain. So then you would gather it down to the width that you need it to be and have lovely ruffles. And right now I'm just running my bobbin, or filling my bobbin. Filling the bobbin for the next row of gathering stitches. Just really working on gathering ruffles today and talking about how to do that. I've been getting a lot of questions about ruffles in different capacities. on my website and on social media. So I figured I would talk about the 3 ways that I gather ruffles. So I'm just loading my bobbin and okay. Threading my machine. And done. Okay. So you want to make sure that when you're running this, you're gathering stitches. Sewing sounds difficult. Good morning. That's why we're here to learn. It's not difficult. So I have thread tails, long thread tails on each end of my gathering stitches because that makes it easier to pull. You've got something to pull on. So I'm doing my second row of gathering stitches. So right now I have 1 row of gathering stitches here, and the stitches are as long as possible to give me easy to gather. So they're very long stitches, and I'm gonna do the second run. This one is 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric, so it's presser foot width away. So I'm just running the fabric along the edge of the presser foot for the first row. And then the second row, I'm gonna run right under 5/8. So I've got my 5/8 mark, and I'm gonna run the whole length of the fabric. Again, no back stitching. Do not back stitch. Because when you go to pull these threads, it's going to, the threads are going to move. So you don't want to back stitch because then that kind of locks it in, and then you don't have the ability to move across the fabric. The reason that I like to do these this way, pull your thread tails out nice and long. Okay. So now I have 2 rows of stitching, okay? 2 rows of stitching all the way across. This actually gathered a little bit there. So 2 rows of stitching all the way across. Oh, because it pulled my thread. Okay. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your threads, 1 on each side here, 1 from each row of stitching, and you're only gonna pick the front one or the back one. So I am on the top threads here, and then the back threads that run together are on the back side. So, and then you just slide the fabric. So you're holding on to your thread chain, your long thread tails, and you're just sliding the fabric down with your fingers. And the reason that I like this option is because when you gather them down, you have the neatest, most pretty gathers. Let me show you here. It's curling up on me. They look like this, right? Aren't those pretty? And then when you stitch, it basically gives you the perfect line of stitching. And when you sew, then they aren't all crazy. So this here is the way that I like to gather, because I think that they are a lot prettier. See that? Okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is gathering down to, so sometimes you'll have big bouncy ruffles, and sometimes you'll have the tiny, almost like period drama ruffles where it's like a lot of fabric gathered down to the tiniest waistband. And the fluffier the skirt, or if you're gathering tulle, I do this, you can do the same one, or you can do over the yarn option if you're doing tulle. I've been getting a lot of questions about gathering tulle skirts down to a ribbon waistband, like for little girls or costumes or stuff like that. This option here works really well for that because this gives you like a sturdy thing to pull on. And sometimes when you're gathering tulle down or netting down to make an underskirt, if you're gathering that down, you really need a sturdy thing to pull because it's very, there's a lot of holes. So this option is really good for that. Again, this is a zigzag over top of a piece of yarn, or this is like a heavy duty string, like a thick white string. So this option is really good for that if you zigzag over it. So you run down the machine like this and you zigzag over top of the thread, and you don't hit the thread, you just zigzag over top of it, and that's why it slides along. So the zigzags make the tunnel for you to pull, and this gives you something really sturdy to pull if you're gathering really tight layers of netting or tulle. So the last thing I want to talk about with gathering the ruffles here is if you are pulling these here, all right, and you have it gathered all the way down to where you want to go, and the width that you need. So I have this gathered down to this amount, right? This whole panel gathers down to this amount. And if you're using a really thin, light fabric and you want it to be, you know, as gathered as possible, then you just do multiple sections, as many panels as you can. And then you'll stitch the panels together, seam the panel together, right? This panel I have hemmed before I sewed it together so that when I'm gathering this, I have less of this to do. So then you would seam each panel together down the middle, and then you would attach it to your skirt. This gives you a really good visual of how much gathering you have. So if this is your skirt, this is your skirt front, and you're adding this to the bottom, you're visually able to see how many panels you need, right? You're able to see how many panels, how many sections you need to go all the way around. And if you sew these together, you can sew them together first and then run your gathering stitches. But the reason that I don't do that is because if your bobbin runs out, then you're still doing multiple sections anyways. And I like to be able to see if I need to say, this is 2 gathered and I only have 4 panels, but I need to spread them out. Then you just lightly spread it out to make it longer. You can make it longer. So I like to have multiple panels that have gathering stitches so that I can adjust them down the length of the skirt hem. So for this is the skirt pattern here that I've been working on, and you can do this one too. So this is kind of customizable where you can do like long here and 1 long ruffle, or you can do, I did 2 ruffles on my other skirt I'm gonna show you guys today. So that's why I like to do the sections of gathering. So this one here for this example, hi everybody. This one here is the 2 layers of gathering. 2 layers of gathering stitches. Again, those are really long as your stitch length will go. 2 rows of gathering stitches next to each other, one at the width of the presser foot. So you run the fabric down the edge of the presser foot, all the way the length of your panel. And then the next one you come back and you go right under 5/8 or at 5/8 if you're more comfortable with that. The reason I say under 5/8 is that if you're sewing this to your skirt at 5/8, then you don't have to worry about these gathering stitches sticking out on you. So I like to do these for this particular project because I can, like I said, adjust them. If I want it this width, or if I want it wider, or if I want it tighter, then I can put them onto the skirt with some pins, and then I can adjust the panels all the way around the hem. How do you layer one onto each other? This sewing machine is a Janome machine. Janome just sent me this machine to try out. So this is new for me. This is a Janome. It's MC9450. This is the machine that they sell. I was sewing on, I have a Brother machine, but Janome did send me this machine to try out and to do some videos with. So I'm sewing on this to get used to it. And what else? Oh, for anybody who just joined, I did talk about, you asked, how do you layer one onto each other? Are you talking about attaching the ruffle panel to the skirt, or attaching the ruffles to each other? Attaching the ruffles to each other, or attaching the ruffle to the skirt. So if this is the skirt here, or layering one onto each other, are we talking about 2 layers of ruffles? 1 layer of ruffle, 2 layers of ruffles. So this skirt is the skirt that I made for this week. She has 2 layers of ruffles together. So I stitched the top layer all the way around, and then I went underneath and secured the second layer to the same seam line. And this is gonna look crazy on camera. So both layers of ruffles are attached at the same seam line here. And this is difficult to see. I'm really sorry about that because it is dotted. So this is the inside of that skirt. They're both sewn. So one is a long ruffle and one is a short ruffle, and they're both sewn to the same seam line inside. 2 different lengths, yes. So there's 1 long length and 1 short length. Now, the other side to that coin, the next skirt that I'm also going to be working on, not today, but I'm going to work on, it's going to be a free pattern for next week. And it's going to be a skirt that, so yeah, this one has a short ruffle and a long ruffle. So they're 2 different lengths. So one is like, I think on this skirt, it's like, I don't know, 8 inches, and the other one's 14 or whatever. So the other way, some skirts right now that are really popular, which is what I'm going to work on for next week, is they're gathered at the hem of each ruffle. So there's 1 layer of ruffle, say like this, and then there's another layer of ruffle here, and then you gather this to the bottom of this. So the reason that you would do that is the skirts that have 3 or 4 lengths down the skirt and they get wider and bigger at the bottom, that's the skirt I'm going to be working on. So the way that you would do that is you would have, say this piece is 20 inches wide this way, like 20 inches long, and then this piece would be 40 inches long, and you would gather your 40 inches down to the 20 inches, and then you would have multiple at the hem of this, and then you would just keep going down. So it's kind of like a petticoat, the way that they used to make them. So then you would just attach it to the hem, and you wouldn't hem like, so I hemmed this skirt ruffle. I like to hem the panels at the bottom of the skirt before I attach them, because then it makes it like feel like I have less work, and it's easier to hem, do like a thin rolled hem. It's easier to do that when I don't have like this big huge skirt on the machine. So I like to hem the panels before I put them on the skirt, which is easier when you only have just one panel here, right? Instead of crazy amounts of fabric and then I'm trying to like shove it through the machine. So to answer your question, so I've got one round around the skirt, right? And I'm gathering this layer to that, and I'm attaching it, sewing it together at 5/8. And then I'm gonna do the next layer and I'm gonna attach it to that skirt, that ruffle layer, and go all the way around. So I'm actually gonna be doing a tutorial for that this week, which is really interesting that you asked that question. But it will be layered ruffle attached to the next one. But for this skirt that I just did, I did do a short ruffle and then a long ruffle underneath, and they're both attached at the same point. So that's for this skirt. And I actually haven't, anybody who is, yeah, let me write your name down. So anybody who isn't already following, I have a Sewing Saturdays page where I put all of the stuff that's coming up for the next week. And I have, so register for that email. It's on my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays. LDEL. Oh. There we go. ALDEL 89. Here we go. Okay. Sorry about that. The pen wasn't working. Okay, so make sure that you register for the Sewing Saturdays emails. Those go out every week. And because school is back in session, I am back in session with sewing school. So every Saturday I do a live class, and we're going to be working on something different every week. And I'm also going to be featuring a lot of teaching stuff this this semester. Okay, so for the next, for this here, so right now I'm just working on gathering ruffles because I've been getting a lot of questions on ruffles and gathering them down to a ribbon. So the things that I did address today were 3 different ways to gather your ruffle. The first one, which is the best for, in my opinion, netting, which is the like the crinoline, the netting that goes underneath of the skirt to keep it like really poofy. You know, the ones that have like fancy ball gowns, they have the netting underneath. So it's the netting that has the really big holes. So I think that this is the best way to gather that. This is a thick string, and it's got zigzags over the thick string, so it slides. So the zigzag makes the tunnel, and you just put it on the machine like this, and so you would have it on your machine like this, and you would have your string or your yarn down the center, and you're just zigzagging over it. So then the zigzags make the tunnel, and the fabric slides right across it. The reason that I like to do it this way for netting is because netting has all those holes, and this gives you something to like very strongly pull on. Another thing is because netting, when you're gathering it, you're usually gathering like huge long sections down to nothing, which makes it that big poofy extravagant look. I like to do this because it gives you this isn't gonna break on you. You know, you can pull this as hard as you want. It's not gonna break. So this for netting, this method for netting. And then the next method that I talked about was gathering with a whole bunch of pins. So you have your skirt front, and you have your long piece, and then you just pin it like you're gonna sew it on both ends, and then you find the center, pin it down, find the center, pin it down, and then you go back and you find the center in between the pins and you pin it down so that you work all of the excess of your ruffle layer down to the layer that you're trying to get to. So that was the second method. And then the third method for gathering a ruffle is running the 2 layers of gathering stitches next to each other. Gathering stitches on the machine look like really long basting stitches. So on your machine, they're the longest stitch that you can do. Hi, Rizwana. How are you? I see you every week. Thank you for returning. I love having you. So for the gathering stitches on the machine, you have the 2 layers of stitching. I did 1 layer. The first one is the presser foot a width away from the edge. So you're running the fabric through the machine and it's going down the edge of the presser foot is the first row. And then the second row, you're gonna go back and go just under 5/8 and do the longest stitches that you can do. And then you're gonna pull. So you want 2 threads on the same side of the fabric. So if I want my top thread, right? So you want your top threads on both sides, and then you just slide it across, okay? And you can do as little or as much as you need, but the thing that dictates that is gonna be how full you want it and how wide your skirt panel is. So if your skirt is this long, you don't need to gather it so tightly if you're trying to match the fabric. But say that the skirt section that you need to match is this here, then you gather it to match that amount of section. So that's what dictates how little or how much. And if you wanted more, this is your fabric here, you gather it down as tight as you can get it, and then you put another panel next to it, and then another, and then another. And that is how you get like a super, super full, extra full skirt. For example, so I have 3 examples for you. So this one here is like not very gathered, right? So you have your really long ruffled panel and you're going to gather this layer to the width that you need for the waistband, okay? This is super gathered, lots and lots of layers, and you can see that there's probably a layer of that netting I was talking about underneath so that it sticks out down here. So the way to get this out down here is to have those layers of netting underneath. So this is lots and lots and lots of panels put together to get this completely full puffed out look. And another one here. So this here is where this ruffle is attached to this skirt. Now this one is gathered, obviously it's gathered, but this down here is multiple sections like this, and they're seamed together in between each panel there. So you would cut long strips across your fabric, and then you would gather them down to as full as you want. You see how this is sticking out right here? So you would gather this down to as full as you wanted this down here to be. These are actually gonna be My sister-in-law is getting married, and these are gonna be my daughter's dresses, so I have these pictures ready to go. So I've been gathering a lot of ruffles lately. I'll probably have doing some videos of that too. Does anybody have any questions on any of this here? Does anybody have any questions? Hello, Martina. How are you guys doing? Does anybody have any questions for me on gathering ruffles? I get a lot of questions on my social media. About gathering ruffles. I've gotten quite a few about gathering ruffles down to a waistband. Like I said before, so on this here, you can go as much or as little as you need to. You can adjust. So if your waistband is smaller than this, then you go down smaller. But if it's not, then you can just adjust them, make them look nice and even, adjust it the width of the waistband, and then you would attach it to your waistband. Just like that. So this is my favorite. This is my favorite way to gather ruffles, and I like them because it gives me a nice, easy way to sew. And then I just put my right sides together, and then I make sure that, I guess you would call it combing. So I would put my right sides together, and as I'm sewing, I just kind of lightly like comb the fabric so that the ruffles stay nice and even, and I don't have any ruffle areas that like slip around and get caught, because then you'll have puckers, and you don't want puckers. And another nice thing about when you're like laying it down like this to attach it, you can kind of like adjust them so that they all look nice and even. So you want to make sure though, when you're sewing them together, you're lining this up so it's nice and straight with your fabric, and then you're just constantly kind of straightening out that ruffle as you're sewing so that it's nice and pretty. You do gathering like this too? I love it. This is my favorite. This is my favorite way to gather the ruffles. It takes a lot of thread. Like I said, it's a lot of thread. You're gonna go through a lot of thread if you use this method. The other one for netting, I recommend this one for netting, the zigzag over the string or yarn or something that's really strong. You wanna be able to pull it, because you're gonna be pulling and pulling and pulling, and you wanna make sure that it's not gonna rip on you, because if this one rips, the other thing, if these threads rip, you can kind of get back in there and make another line of stitching, or you can, you know, start the next row and you can kind of gather this down. If this sucker rips on you, you're done, because there's nothing. Do you iron after completing the project? Yes. So depending on your fabric with ruffles, I definitely steam it with the iron. Usually you can iron them. You can just iron them like this. And if it's a fabric that, if you want your ruffles to be kind of bouncy, you might not want to smash them and iron them, because then this will give you creases down here, and then you're going to have to iron the whole panel out. So I actually I will like iron this section separately than this section, if that makes sense, because you don't want, like, if these were pleats, I would say smash and iron, but you're gonna end up ironing this ruffle by itself and then ironing your seam line by itself to get these to lay down nice, because if you want it to lay down really nice. But if you're doing something like this with the tool, I would steam this with the iron at that section. So you could do like a steamer, like the ones that you hold up and down, and that'll get them to like fall down really nicely. But for this, if I were ironing this on a flat iron, I would iron the seam line and then kind of like hit the steamer here, and then I would iron this section or the hem of the ruffle by itself. That's how I would iron that. Does anybody else have any questions on this here, on the ruffle? gathering a ruffle down. My kids. So gathering the ruffle down as little or as much as you want. This one's adjustable. The second way I did was the pins. You made a bridesmaid's dress similar to the picture with the dotted. Ooh, nice. I'm gonna be doing this one. I'll probably have some videos up and I'll probably be showing you guys what I'm working on the next few weeks. But I'm gonna be doing this one here in lavender. And then these ones are gonna be lavender and pink, and then the skirt, lavender and pink, one of each. Because those are the colors that were picked. Does anybody else have any questions for me on gathering ruffles? So the reason that I have this, I did gathering ruffles today, is because I just put this up, this pattern up, and it's basically it's my basic skirt block, and then I'm gathering the ruffles on the bottom, and then this one here just has the alternate hem and then just gathered ruffles. So I wanted to talk about gathered ruffles with you guys today because I've been getting a lot of questions about gathering ruffles down to waistbands and gathering ruffles on skirts, and I'm going to be posting some videos on a skirt that has the 1, 2, 3, 4 like layers tall, and then the gathered ruffles there. So be watching out for that video because I'm really excited about it. That's not going to be a pattern. That's going to be a how to make it for your height situation. There's the gathering foot, but how do you get the length right then? So I do have a gathering foot. And the way that it works really, really well if you're trying to just gather down really a bunch of panels, you know? But then you do have the gathering thread. You have the thread, but you don't have 2 threads. You just have one row of stitching. So you can kind of, because it's like a long stitch, you can kind of move it. But there are, on the gathering foot, there's options for like less gathered, more gathered, how many gathers per inch kind of a situation. So that's the way that you adjust that. You just kind of have to play with it to see which one you want. There's like a 3 gathers per inch, 6 gathers per inch, and 12 gathers per inch are the options. This pattern here is on my shop, on my website. So if you go to my link in bio and you go to shop, I also have a coupon for anybody who's in class today. If you use the coupon just Havana, there's a discount off of the pattern. I sent that out in my email list this week as an early bird pattern, but I figured anybody who asked about it during class, if you use the word Havana as a code, that's an additional coupon. So check this out. This is, I have extra small through 4X on this pattern. And if you need additional sizing, smaller or larger, or you want help learning how to adjust your own patterns, smaller or larger, that is also something I'm going to be covering this semester. I'm going to be starting up. Sewing Saturdays will be every Saturday again. I kind of took some time off during the summer to visit family, so I'm going to be definitely back into it. So every Saturday I do Sewing Saturdays classes, and if there's anything you want me to cover, definitely let me know. If you go to Sewing Saturdays, my link in bio under Sewing Saturdays, you can register for that email list. It's one email, maybe a reminder, but like one email a week has everything that's going on, any new articles that got published, and any new videos that get published. So you'll have all the information for the week, tons of learning stuff, and then it'll have the information on what we're going to do for class if you want to participate in class, and how you can do that. So sign up for that email registration on Sewing Saturdays page, and let me know if you want to see anything special or if you're working on something and you need help with it. I am here to teach. I love teaching you guys, and I love doing it live because I love having the questions show up on my screen. So just a quick recap before I pop off of here. We covered, this is the pattern that I'm talking about this week. This is the Havana skirt collection. And I don't know if you saw the recent post that I did, but this is the skirt that I made for this here. This is the skirt. It looks crazy with polka dots. It's a two layered ruffle, so one long ruffle and one short ruffle. And this is the option C, the alternate hem, so it's like a high-low hem. So that's this one here. So each layer, each one has, like, this is longer. And I also have in this pattern how to lengthen or shorten this layer. So you kind of have to decide what you want to do with it. I also have some inspiration pictures in the images, so you can do a long with a ruffle, or you could do a short with a ruffle or two ruffles. And then this one here is the one that I did with the high-low, and it has, I did mine with two layers, one long and one short underneath. So if you decide to look at this pattern today, I have code Havana for a discount on there. I had it as an early bird coupon in my email list. Sometimes I like to do that for anybody who's paying attention, to see who's paying attention. And I just talked about gathering ruffles today. That's all I talked about today. So today I just picked this topic because I've been getting a lot of questions. This is my favorite way to gather ruffles, with 2 layers of gathering stitches, run right next to each other and gather down, so you would have multiple panels, and you would just sew your panels together. And I like to do them in individual panels so that in case your thread rips, you're not, messing your entire layer of ruffles around. And then I also talked about this one here, which I like to use for netting. Netting is the layer of crinoline underneath of your dress to keep it poofy. This is the string. I've got a really thick string, and then I just zigzagged over top of it so that the fabric slides down the tunnel, right? The zigzag makes the tunnel, and this gives you a really good something to hold on to. The reason I don't like to use this when I am sewing is because this isn't as easy to sew as this. This gives me a really nice, pretty spot to sew where it's like already smashed down in both sections for you. And if you want, you can actually sew in between the gathering stitches and then just pull the bottom gathering stitch. You just pull one of the threads all the way out and the other one just falls off. So I showed these 2, and then I showed an option for pinning just with pins. So these are my 1, 2, and 3 ways of gathering down your fabric. Does anybody have any questions before I leave today? Anybody have any questions at all? I am going to be live on Facebook and TikTok, and my class playbacks are always on the bottom of my Sewing Saturdays page. There's a playlist at the bottom there. So every week I post the full playback for class in case you missed part of it or you want to go back and watch it, anything like that. And then on my website I have lots of videos which are going to be just absolutely doubled in the next few weeks. So anything you want to learn, send me an email, drop me a comment on any social media or anything like that, anything you guys want to see. Today I did ruffles because I've been getting a lot of questions on how I gather ruffles, how you gather it down to a waistband. And, like I said, I like this one because you can adjust it if you need to adjust it. Gather it up, gather it down. So the two thread gathering method, basting stitches, 2 rows of basting stitches next to each other. This is my favorite. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions? If you haven't already, check out my link in bio, Sewing Saturdays, and register for that email so that you don't miss what we're doing for next week. And like I said, I'll be posting a really cool video this week. And I'll also be sending that out in my email list with how to make your own skirt. I do have right now on my website how to draft a skirt for free from measurements. So go ahead and check that out. That's in my link in bio under Learn Pattern Design, and that class is actually free right now. So definitely check that out. I've got quite a few free classes right now. The more I add, I'll be adding like a membership with higher option stuff. But right now, everything on my website is free to you guys, except for some patterns. But if you want to buy them, great. If you don't, whatever. Don't forget to sign up for the Sewing Saturdays email registration. That goes out one time a week, and it's super non-spammy. It just shows what we're doing. And if you want to join, great. And if you don't, then that email also has articles that went out for the week, new videos that are up for the week. It just kind of tells you what's going on. So get ready to learn. Sewing Saturdays every week is 12 Eastern Standard Time, and I'm also going to be trying to add back in Wednesday nights. So if there's anything you guys want to learn, definitely email me and let me know. If you have any comments or questions or anything like that. Drop me an email or comment on the Sewing Saturdays page or anywhere on my website, anywhere on social media, anything like that. So thank you guys for joining me, and let me know how you like the class. And I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you.